pin our hopes to the ground, but we can work it out. 'Cause giving in is oh so hard, when love is at stake. Where there's a will, there's a way. Now if we only knew how, learning to love, learning to laugh and fear, learning to fight through these years that bring us closer together. Learning to love, learning the first golden rule, knowing that anything is possible. 'Cause nothing's gonna keep us from, nothing's gonna keep us from learning the ropes.
Hits me in the feels every time, folks. Greetings and salutations, everybody. I'm Xlj the Og, and welcome back to Learning the Ropes here live on Cole TV this beautiful Thursday night, wherever you are. And tonight is going to be a very awesome episode. This is an episode I've been wanting to do for a long, long time. I am a huge fan of Extreme Championship Wrestling. And tonight we're going to take a look at an era and a time frame that I think a lot of people kind of forget about or don't pay nearly as much attention to, and that's the last year of ECW. And yes, just to clarify, we're talking the last year of Extreme Championship Wrestling, not WWECW. We're looking back at the year 2000. But before we get into it, as always, like we do here on Learning the Ropes, we got to start off with a plug-a-palooza. It's been a pretty busy week here on Cole TV. We've had a lot of content come your way, and you can catch replays of all of our shows, such as Pro Wrestling 60. Had a brand new episode of I'm Your Huckleberry, where I got to check out the Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia, which is awesome. Had an amazing time with my good, close personal friend, Dr. Big Money and Mrs. Big Money. Shout out to them. And you can also catch a replay of our Impact Wrestling vlog, which is up now, where Mr. B-Roll and I got to go to Impact Wrestling's tapings there in beautiful Newport, Kentucky. All that is available now on Cole TV. And hey, next week we got a busy week as well. Brand new episode, of course, of PW60, as well as we got a brand new episode of The Hunt coming your way, where I got to check out with Daddy O, Evansville's Toys and Games, which is an amazing place, by the way. I'm real excited for everybody to see that. And we got another wrestling vlog coming your way, too. This was an interesting one because this is where Mr. B-Roll and I got to check out micro wrestling. Yes, the micro wrestling that you hear about that is on, has the show Little Brawlers on Discovery Channel. And of course, as always, don't forget you can get some of the Cole TV merch over on ProWrestlingTees.com. You can get your Cole TV shirt as well as your PW60 shirt. And we got some more to come, so stay tuned for that. That all being said, like I say, this is an exciting topic I want to get right into. Unfortunately, my partner in crime, my brother from another mother, Mr. B-Roll, could not be with us here tonight as he's got some sickness going on. So we wish you well, buddy, and we're thinking about it. But it's okay because we have somebody here tonight who's going to fill in for him. And this man, you know him, you love him, because he's practically, we're going to have to put him on the Cole TV payroll at this point. But let's bring him in, the wrestling encyclopedia himself, one Michael J. Duplessis. How you doing, bro?
What's up, y'all? How you doing? Yeah, you should be.
I know. We're going to get you on the payroll. We might as well. So it's happening. It's happening. Yeah. It's in the works. We're getting with HR. They're inking some things out. So we'll get it going to you. You'll be hearing from HR here real soon, by the way.
Okay.
But appreciate you coming on. Yes.
Actually, one of my favorite topics.
This is going to be an amazing topic. But also join us tonight. We got a very special guest. Actually, first time here, I believe, on Cole TV with us. Definitely first time here on Learning the Ropes. He is my other brother from over on World Championship Wreckage. Let's bring him in. The Will Gray himself. How are you, sir?
Gentlemen, it's good to see you both. I'm really glad to be here. Just really glad to be here.
We're really glad to have you here. I feel like this is long overdue, my friend. So excited to have you here with us tonight on Learning the Ropes. And man, oh man, this is going to be an exciting topic. The last year of ECW. So before we get right into it, first thing I want to ask you guys, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the last year of ECW? You think of ECW in the year 2000.
TNN.
TNN.
Them
Yes.
TNA days.
Yeah.
Because that
Michael,
had.
let me ask you, were you a fan of the Friday Night Thrill Zone? Were you watching Roller Jam
So,
afterwards?
ironically, yes. I
I
watched
fucking love Roller Jam. I don't care what anybody says. That shit was stupid as fuck, but I loved it.
those 3 hours on Thursday nights were some of the best TV. You had ECW, Roller Jam, and you had Slam Ball.
Slam Ball was cool too. I did like Slam Ball.
This is actually how I got introduced to ECW, was on TNA.
Really? Okay,
Yes.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Did you always feel like when Joey Styles had to read like about the Friday Night Thrill Zone, he died a little inside each time he had to read that shit? Because I did.
Yeah. Which I don't understand. 3 great shows that I legit never missed an episode of.
Yeah, I could say I liked Roller Jam. It was stupid and ridiculous, but I feel like they need to bring that back in some capacity. But anyways, Will, what about you? What's kind of some of the first thoughts you think of ECW in 2000?
Speaking of the TNN stuff, you guys have seen Dodgeball, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
TNN was like ESPN the Ocho, because you would always see these most like random off the wall sports like slam ball. As soon as you said that, that was like a rush of nostalgia, like these crazy psychos doing all. I was like, man, that's nuts. For me, the few things that I think of towards that, especially that last year of ECW, and we'll get to a couple of them. One is going to be the collapse of the TV deal and everything that went down with Raw and all of that. My other one is infinitely my love for Joey Styles.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever got the true love he should have in WWE. He has the infamous, Joey Styles pipe bomb that he does where he comes out and he talks about yeah, he gets pulled from WrestleMania, then he gets pulled from Backlash and he's pissed about it. Like
Backlash?
Yeah.
Backlash? I fucking love that shit.
So to me, those are the two big ones that come to mind. As a fan, though, when I was watching, have you ever watched a show and they know they're getting canceled during that season? You can kind of see it in their faces.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it felt as a fan, because if you had been watching ECW for any amount of time, you knew the writing was on the wall, who was coming over. You knew that ECW was probably on the way out. So you could see it. I felt like you could see it in their faces. It was like they knew they only had X amount of shows left, and then they had to go off and do other things. And I feel like you kind of saw that a little bit at that point in the actual work itself.
There was a lot of uncertainty, I think. I will say this, though, to all of the athletes' credit, though. I mean, they still put on phenomenal matches, and there's some incredible matches throughout this time frame, too. But you're right. It just
crazy to hear you say that, Will, with some of the information I know, who was behind the scenes, like backstage hanging out at those last few ECW shows, who were told they were going to be making their ECW debuts.
There was a whole lot of shystiness at that point. We just covered it on Botch Spots After Dark. It was the fall of ECW. We did it right around WrestleMania season because of Philadelphia. Yeah. And the way I formatted that episode, no free shout outs, was I took what I said were the 5 biggest reasons ECW collapsed. 2 of those 5 were failed working relationships with bigger promotions. The failed working relationship with WCW in the beginning of their existence, and then the failed WWE working relationship at the end of it. And then you put the TV deal on top, and it just started stacking up where if Paul Heyman was fighting with a stacked deck, he had nothing he could do.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to look at like the state of affairs of where ECW was in 1999 going into 2000. Because ECW, as we diehards know, like they have been fighting for years to be like a top nationally syndicated show. Like what, and they always were in our eyes the big 3, one of the big 3. You look 99, of course, they get the TNN deal. They also have a ton of licensing deal going on at this time frame as well. They have home video through Pioneer Entertainment. They start to do a toy line through San Francisco Toy Makers. They release their own ECW CD. They have video games through Acclaim. It's just like, okay, this is like what you do if you want to be a top promotion in North America. You have all these licensing deals going on. which to me it was always fascinating too to like see the ECW video game, even though it was like a rip
By
off
the
of the
way,
Attitude game, but whatever.
The ECW video game, the wrestlers didn't give a fuck because they knew they weren't getting paid. So they like, if you listen to like the sound bites, it's a lot of them just like making like fart noises and whatnot, and then like, yeah,
There is a lot of grunting. Yes,
yeah,
and farting.
a lot of them just messing around because they weren't getting, I guess, paid.
You
what
didn't
they thought.
also know for sure if it was even going to see the light of day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know, like
so yeah, I found
And-
that out from a Danny Doring shoot interview.
And also it's crazy too. There was actually 2 video games they put out. Like there was Anarchy Rules and the one they had on Dreamcast too.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just crazy to think, man. But I mean, they even had their own magazine that was out there and stuff. I mean, they had everything going out there. It's just crazy to me because on paper, you look what they're doing, and it's like, well, shit, they're like firing all cylinders. How the hell is it this company would go out of business? But will, like, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, man. I think it's just these fumbled and failed attempts, and Paul just trying to do just you know, you can only shyster for so long, and then it caught up to him, and well,
that second game was Hardcore Revolution.
Hardcore Revolution. Okay, yeah.
RVD on the cover.
Yeah, it was a pretty dope game too, by the way. But I mean, also too, you look at '99 going into 2000. At this point, you could argue ECW lost their 2 biggest acts at the time with Taz and the Dudley Boys going off to the WWF. But nonetheless, I mean, ECW was still striding on. I think also too, it was kind of a sign of things to come too with the relationship between TNN and Paul Heyman with the very first episode. Of course, it was supposed to be, you know, that famous that flaming table spot, you know, with the Dudleys and Balls Mahoney, and they ended up putting like the Hardcore Heaven matchup between Rob Van Dam and Jerry Lynn on their first episode. It was just like, well, fuck it. This is what we're gonna do. So, but it was very fascinating to me, like to look at this time frame in 2000. One thing I loved about this time frame, honestly, was the roster. I thought the roster in 2000 was very unique of what you had in ECW because it was a mixture of guys. You had like your guys on the rise, guys like Lance Storm and Just Incredible, the Impact players. You've got guys that are starting to like kind of come on the rise and be pushed. Guys like Rhino, who had a hell of a year in 2000. And then also, I think you look at other guys who were kind of like, you know, starting to kind of come up on the rise. Guys like Kid Cash and C.W. Anderson, Danny Doran, Roadkill.
This time.
Yeah.
Nova
Yeah,
got a great singles push.
And Nova. Yeah, Nova, absolutely, man. Like, because that, I mean,
Nova.
Nova diehard for years with ECW. I mean, you think about his career at this point, too, man. Just going from like that tag team comedy act with the Blue Meanie, and we all knew like Nova was a damn good wrestler, but to becoming just like, holy shit, this guy can fucking go. Like just those are some of the guys, and then it was interesting to do see some of the ECW originals who returned back in like late '99, such as like Sandman and Raven and so on. So, but we'll kind of go through this kind of chronologically. So first off, kind of starting off in the year 2000, if you look at your list of your champions, your world champion is Mike Awesome, who was on a dominant run. I see you, Mike. I know. we're gonna get to that. But you know, and he had that incredible rivalry with Masato Tanaka. And then your television champion, of course, is still Rob Van Dam, who is easily the greatest ECW television champion of all time. I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about that. I mean, he's in the middle of this historic run. And then, interestingly enough, your tag team champions was Raven and Tommy Dreamer, which that was just a crazy storyline they did with Raven and Dreamer.
Oh, yeah. That was right after Raven left WCW and walked out of the meeting.
Yep.
Returned. Because it's, you know, fuck Bischoff.
Yeah. Pretty much. And of course, he was welcomed back with open arms with Paul Heyman. But so if you look at like the first real big show in the start of 2000, it was Guilty as Charged 2000, which is a pretty solid pay-per-view, in my opinion. First of all, the main event of this show is one of my like hidden gems. If somebody asked me to show them a match from ECW, this is instantly probably in my like top 3 or 4 I'm going to show them. It's for the ECW title. It's Mike Awesome against Spike Dudley. And I mean, it's just it's a fucking spot fest, but goddamn, is it fucking good? I mean, I can't even remember how many fucking tables Spike Dudley goes through in this damn matchup. Do you guys remember that matchup? Do you have any fond memories of this matchup?
I do. This is my my second favorite match on the card. But yes, that is the table spots in that match are crazy.
Yeah. And what about you, Will?
I think Spike Dudley is known when you think about the word jobber. People a lot of times want to put like a negative connotation to that because it's somebody who is they go out there and yes, a jobber does historically lose a lot, but it's also somebody who is they're good at making other people look good. Mick Foley was another guy that was great at that. He could take a shitty punch and make it look like $1 million. Spike Dudley was one of those guys. And the perfect thing about Spike Dudley is he could work like a big man, but because of his size, somebody as strong as Mike Awesome could literally do whatever he wanted in that match. There wasn't a spot that Spike came up with that Mike's like, I don't know if I can pull that off. You know, like a lot of times people talk about Kevin Nash throwing Rey Mysterio through the window. People need to talk more about what Mike Awesome did to Spike Dudley, because that was a lot more than throwing Ray into the side of the trailer. Like it was it. And for that to be such a dynamic size difference between the two, and you wouldn't think that Spike wouldn't have got his shit in, but Spike still got some stuff in.
Oh,
yeah. Matt Heisen, one of my favorite cruiserweights. And for somebody who was a teacher and had an educational degree before, getting the professional wrestling and, did Shakespeare.
Yeah, he has his backstory is fascinating. What he ended up doing after wrestling too, it's just incredible.
He does insurance and realty and whatnot. Yeah,
just chill as fuck. I will say this with Spike. I honestly, in my opinion, I think Spike Dudley's like the greatest bumper in the history of wrestling. In my opinion, I think that's saying something. But man, like if you were working with a match with Spike Dudley, you knew the shit was going to look good. Like that man could bump like no other.
And he had no fucks to give. Like you could anything to do with that dude. And it was like, okay, you want to throw me into the crowd and I crowd surf for 2 minutes? Fine.
Well, fuck it, we'll do it. I don't care. Let me hit you with an assist drop and we're good. But I think what was interesting too, is the build up to this matchup, because at the time, like Mike Awesome had pretty much knocked the teeth of Spike Dudley's girlfriend out. I'll never forget like some of them promos of Spike too, especially when he comes out at the beginning of this, man, and he's super pissed off and he's just like, "Bit your big goofy fucking ass out here so I can knock your goddamn teeth out." It's like, shit, dude.
His promos against big men were always great, because he had great promos against Bam Bam too.
Oh yeah.
It's just like, I'm a pissed off little guy. Let me kick your ass.
Yeah, Spike Dudley was fucking amazing, man. But this show had some solid other matches on it too, as well. Sabu and Rob Van Dam for the TV title. Always fun when those guys got together, and great tag team. But even greater, I think, in my opinion, their matches one-on-one with each other. But I think the defining moment of this show really is the crowning and the arrival of the Impact players, because Lance Storm and Justin Credible would win the ECW tag team titles from Raven and Tommy Dreamer on this show. Let me ask you this, guys. What do you think of when I say the Impact players? What do you remember most about them?
Two great workers, underrated tag team, and really was the backbone of that tag team division in that last year. Because
it was,
especially after the Dudleys leave, they kind of picked it up as
they needed there was a huge void to fill.
Yeah, especially as a heel tag team.
Yeah,
like you're just like, how do you? They couldn't replace the Dudleys, of course, but they did make their own inch mark.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They were in 2000. What that 99-2000 run? What Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero were in that 95-96 run, where they were your go out there and have a fantastic wrestling match for 20-25 minutes in the middle of the ECW car crash that was happening. And that's what Malenko and Eddie Guerrero would do in the early 90s.
94. 93, 94, 94, 95.
So I think that's the way it is. But I also think about the fact, if you look at it in 2024, you couldn't see two men that were on complete opposite ends of the spectrum, though, because Lance Storm is heralded as being like one of the wholesome, good time stories of the wrestling business. And now Just Incredible is literally known for that guy who will do anything for $1.
Yes.
And then he'll probably still try to figure out a way to screw you out of it. Two opposite ends for such a great tag team 24 years ago, but now they're two totally different people. Lance Storm is still heralded in the business. He's still I'm pretty sure he's a coach in AEW right now.
Lance is still in the business.
Still works with
his own wrestling school in Canada.
I was gonna say he's got a wrestling school.
Yeah,
that's where Dominic Mysterio went.
Like
small fact. He wrestled with Lance Storm in Canada's Indies. So that way people up there were less likely to recognize him.
That's wild, man, to think about. And look at how amazing Dirty Dom is right now. I mean, he's one of the top stars in WWE.
Yeah, he wrestled in Canada, sometimes under a mask to avoid being able, because he wanted to get reps without being Rey Mysterio's son. And I think I give him mad props for that, not to derail 100%. Off of ECW, but Lance Storm's that connecting factor because, I can use that as saying Lance has that reputation. He's also a graduate of the Heart Dungeon. He's one of those guys. He's got that lineage of just being a good fucking wrestler. I'm sorry. Can I cuss here?
You can say whatever the fuck you want, brother.
I was like,
I'm sorry.
Fair fucking game, dude.
I've been minding my P's and Q's.
Old TV, we say whatever the fuck we want, so you go right ahead.
Fair.
But
sorry, but there's a match on this card that I truly love, and actually it's what made me fall in love with ECW. And it was a tag match of Yoshihiro Tajiri, Super Crazy versus Little Guido and Jerry Lynn.
Yeah, that was
that mid-card cruiserweight stuff, the Tajiris, the Super Crazies, Jerry Lynn, and Guido, phenomenal. Whether it was a tag match or the three-way dances, just different.
And it was awesome to see Guido involved in that too, because I think Little Guido's another one of those guys, one of those originals that was kind of got pigeonholed into the comedy act of the FBI. And 2000 was a huge year for him too, because they would you'd have FBI version 2.0, which I think was taken, in my opinion, slightly a little bit more serious than the original FBI. But Guido was fucking amazing. That match was awesome too. And the Tajiri Super Crazy rivalry is one of the all-time great rivals in ECW, hands down. The matches those guys had, it was incredible, man.
That cruiserweight division as a whole, though, was slept on a lot, and people don't give it the props it needs to, and the role it played in the Luchador invasion, because the Luchadors that came up with Conan and Ray and Psychosis and those guys, 92, 93, 94.
About our bar.
Exactly. A lot of those guys, when they came through the ranks, when they came up with them, either went to WCW or ECW. Those were the two landing spots, because WWE wasn't interested in luchadors at the time.
No.
So I think ECW gets slept on a lot too, because WCW and ECW were both equally, in a lot of ways, deserve equal recognition for that luchador invasion and that early to mid 90s push.
Yeah, 1,000% agree, my friend. So as we look at the chronologically here in ECW, at the end of January of this year, a huge unfortunate moment happens on a house show. It was January 29th in Orlando, where Rob Van Dam breaks his leg in a matchup against Rhino. And this is devastating because Van Dam at this point is being positioned to be the next guy, the next top guy. I mean, it's already he already is like the face of ECW. And I mean, he was obviously going to be put in that world title scene, being given the reins to the World Heavyweight Championship. But obviously, they had to put the brakes on that. In hindsight, guys, do you think this was like, because Van Dam would come back later on, but do you think with this injury slowing Van Dam down, I mean, you think when he came back, was it really like the same RVD, or do you think it was a slightly different Van Dam?
Slightly different, but for the right reasons. He knew he wasn't capable of doing the same things, but he was real good about modifying his style to meet the limitations of what he could do. I think, in my opinions, the bigger picture on what happened with Rob Van Dam, though, if you look at then and in WWE and just connecting it through different points in history, he's got maybe the shittiest luck in wrestling history. Because you look at what happened then, he had the longest TV title reign up into that point, historic runs through pay-per-views, defending it almost weekly on TV. Like, the story is the only reason he dropped it was because of the injury. They were going to build him up to being a double champion. It was this huge thing, right? And then the injury happened. And then you look at what happened in WWE, that build up and getting the belt from John Cena and declaring himself the ECW champion. And then he gets popped for cannabis. And you're like, the first one was because he was pushing the limit physically of what his body could do. And then the second one was he was pushing the limits legally of what he could do. And you're like, Rob, damn it, bro. You're always like just a little bit in your own way.
And you can go back to the first One Night Stand where he was supposed to be the face of that main event, but then he gets injured again.
Yeah.
And then has to cut that promo.
Yeah.
He got in trouble and Paul punished him, and he wasn't on the first ECW pay-per-view at all out of punishment because him and Paul had it out. Like, he has a notorious history for being kind of a dick.
Pick a hand, bro.
Oh, God, I love a pick a hand story.
Oh, man. But we love Rob Van Dam. Though.
I'm a Rob Van Dam fan, but
absolutely. Yeah. You're right. It just
calling a spade is,
Yeah, it is. It is what it is. So, well, during this time frame too, as well, like you have storyline wise, the top storyline going on in ECW was kind of art imitating life, as you have the war with the network raging on, and at the head of that is a guy who I don't think gets nearly enough credit. Had an amazing run in ECW. You all know him now. We're talking Cyrus the Virus then, but now you all know him as Don Callis. Do you guys think Cyrus the Virus, like, just for some reason, just doesn't get nearly enough credit, like, as he should in this run? Because, I mean, he played being a fucking dick, like, really fucking good.
He's always been the same person. Like, he's one of those guys where every little bit, he's always just kind of been that guy.
But I feel like with this, though, this is the first time, because, I mean, yes, he was in WWF, but they obviously didn't really, not a whole lot there.
What,
I think this is
like
the first time he gets...
Commission?
Yeah. But that sucked, so we're not talking the Truth Commission. Or the oddities, he brings the oddities in, but anyways. I'm sorry, Will, go ahead.
They have the greatest theme song ever. I will not... That theme song is awesome.
The oddities?
Yeah, that ICP theme song is
amazing. Oh, yeah.
Whoop, whoop.
Like, whoop, whoop. Everybody's got a little juggalo in them, right?
Pretty much.
I think that this was his, like, Al Snow moment. He had all those bad, shitty gimmicks everywhere else, and then when we got here, he kind of got to be himself, and then he just kind of started there, and all the way through till today just evolved who that person and character was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The same character. He's always the asshole, like, running the company or, like, half run the company, because he did the same thing in NWA TNA.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's that... I don't want to say Cornette without being Cornette, but that's kind of the way it came across, that real sleazy heel manager. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's kind of how he came across a lot of times. And even into the night, like when he started it, it was like I said, just an evolution of who that was, I guess.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I love me some Don Callis.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But for me, it all started with that Cyrus the Virus character, man. And just like you can't forget the rivalry you have with Joel Gertner too, man, and the shit they did back and forth. It's fucking
Joel's another
hilarious.
one that doesn't get
Yeah.
the credit he deserves for the things he did. And he's on TikTok now, and his videos are hilarious.
There's a lot of eating some good food too. Shout out to Joel Gertner.
Joe Gertner's the way he knows how to rhyme inappropriate stuff is just amazing.
Oh yeah, I saw him at the tribute show they did at WrestleMania weekend, and it was not the Gertner I expected, but I mean definitely playing into heel elements because he wouldn't do the rhyming or any of that shit. He was playing like a fucking like a PG type of Joel Gertner, but doing it
he's
purposely
definitely
because I'm not gonna give you what you people fucking want. You know, I'm gonna be I'm doing my heelish shit here. So, anyways. But yeah, that time frame too with the Gertner. But with this war with the network too, you see a couple guys start to get the push, this big push, and one of them I want to talk about with you guys right now. And arguably, you could say 2000 may have been the biggest year of his career. And in my opinion, this man is in my top 5 favorite ECW acts. And that's saying a lot. I want to talk right now about the king of old school, Steve fucking Corino. Fuck, I love Corino in this time frame. He's just comes out as like he starts off as this chicken shit, kind of like cocky, like just this manager. You know, he's all about wrestling. And then like the year 2000 for Corino, the evolution of Corino is you talk about like a tale of two different cities. Like from the start of 2000 when we get to the end of 2000. Is fucking nuts to me. But what Corino was doing this time frame, god damn, was it some good
Steve
shit.
Corino's part of my favorite feud in 2000. Steve Corino versus Dusty fucking Rhodes.
Yep, and that's where we're going next.
Great fucking TV.
Yes.
He's one of those guys when you talk longevity in the business as well. Because he's working for WWE to this day as a trainer and a coach. Yeah. And you know what I mean? That says about everything you need to about who Steve Corino was as a person. His son is the light heavyweight champion. Still the light heavyweight champion
in NWA. Colby.
In NWA, Colby Corino. Yeah, like that's one of those guys that just understood it. You know what I mean? Like he just got it, and he's still there today doing what he loved then. But in 2000, you got to see him. He understood that, like, I'm going to have to show somebody I'm more than just the ECW dog and pony show. You know what I mean? So I feel like he really stepped it up in this last year. Some of those guys, he was one of those guys where I was talking about who weren't really sure what was going to be happening. You know what I mean? He knew that if he didn't show up and show out in this last year and a half run, like he didn't know what his next step would be.
And they really gave him a giant push when it comes to him working with outside acts. Because you have that thing with Dusty.
Mm-hmm.
They allowed him to do the thing with Fred Durst.
Yep, at the Limp Bizkit concert.
He got to do the thing with the Smashing Pumpkins
with Billy Corgan.
Yeah. So it was like he was always that guy. They're like, all right, we know he's gonna sell this as the baby, the huge heel asshole that everyone says he get his ass kicked.
Yeah. And I mean the summer that Corino goes on to have, I think there was this crazy statistic back then. It was like 40 days straight of him just bleeding buckets. I mean, Jesus Christ, this man bled so much in the year 2000. Fuck.
I want to know who bled more, him in 2000 or like Ric Flair in 84.
Dude, it's a fucking close race. I'll tell you that. Because, I mean, fuck, Corino bled like bad. I mean, it's still probably Flair, of course. But still, man, fucking crazy.
That was a Corino thing his whole career. Because he did the same thing in Ring of Honor.
But I believe like the first time you really Corino delved into that was like this time frame.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know,
there wasn't 84 the stretch where Flair had like 36 cage matches or something ridiculous in
Yeah.
1 year. Like
Yep.
But he was just getting his ass kicked at like every big event.
from market to market, it was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, and Flair's closing in a cage. Like,
Yeah. That's why I said that year specifically, because he just
Yeah.
got his ass kicked and
Yeah.
bled everywhere.
And so did Steve Corino as well in ECW. But another guy I want to talk about as part of the network who had another massive year in 2000, the Man Beast Rhino.
Oh, okay.
Rhino was built as this unstoppable fucking monster that you did not want to fuck with. He was going to murder you. He was going to murder your children. He was going to murder your parents. He was going to murder everybody in your fucking bloodline. That's like Rhino was that type of badass. Man.
I love Rhino, but god damn it, I thought you were hopefully gonna say for the pop, brother, Mr. Jack Victory.
Oh, well, we gotta acknowledge Jack Victory during this. High spot. Yeah.
High spot.
We got to get one in there for him.
Fucking, I love Jack.
But yeah, dude, Rhino though, like just the way that they built him up as like this rookie monster into this, just like this guy is gonna fucking kill me and like kill everybody in my family. Like, what do you guys remember about like the rise of Rhino in ECW?
The only memory I had, or not memory, but the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Rhino in ECW in 2000 is him goring the fuck out of Sandman's wife.
Yep.
And like pile driving her.
He
That was
beat
just
the fuck out of Lord. Like poor, I felt so bad for her. That
Yeah.
fucking pile driver through the table. It was sick as shit.
and then like him and Scotty Antone beating up Rob Van Dam with the leg brace on after Scotty turned on RVD.
Yeah, but thankfully Rob Van Dam did not end up with the clap, though. Thank God for that. What about you, Will? What do you remember about the rise of Rhino here in 2000?
that 2000 push for Rhino was ECW's version of a Goldberg similar character.
Yeah.
He wasn't the, the over the top babyface good guy like Goldberg by any means. He's a million times the worker Bill Goldberg would ever be. But
human
he
being.
was, and a human being. But he was built to be that larger than life, unstoppable force. And Rhino was believable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When he would spear you or gore you, he would gore you.
Best spear in the business.
Yeah. It looked like he was going to kill you. Now, I have to ask you both a question. It's a long-running joke between a circle of friends. Do you guys think the gore and the spear are different moves?
Yes.
Yes.
I always described it as Rhino did a very different spear. That's what made it the gore.
Yeah, because remember when he didn't win with the gore, that's because it wasn't the gore, it was a spear. But if it hit you with the gore, like nobody ever kicked out of it.
None. Ever.
None. That's facts, Jack. Yes,
that's all I needed to hear. Thank you.
No, I totally agree with you, man. So we talked about Rob Van Dam injured. So now the ECW television title is up for grabs, and it's vacated, and it's put up for grabs in a title tournament that would culminate at the next pay-per-view of this year, which would have been Living Dangerously 2000. So going into Living Dangerously, the predominant storyline was the network and ECW and this power struggle for like who's going to be on top. So they have the title tournament, and it all seems like it's going to be okay. Rhino is the predecessor to win this thing, but surprisingly enough, Rhino did not win the TV title tournament, and won Super Crazy actually ended up winning the tournament and become the ECW television champion. Although it was kind of short-lived, but still, though, he was kind of like, carrying the flag, so to speak, of ECW.
I've never the storyline because they wanted him to join the network, and he was like, no.
Nope. Not going to happen. And then this pay-per-view is also interesting, too, because, Mike, you touched on this, too. This is like the big, I believe, the bull rope match between Corino and Dusty Rhodes.
This has two infamous matches on it, because you also get a very infamous match with New Jack and Vic Rance.
The infamous scaffold spot. Well, not, yeah, they different type of scaffold than XPW, but yes. Yeah, where New Jack pretty much has his brains splattered out all over the arena for the most part. Yet the man still lived to tell the tale and was bitter as fuck about it. But then again, you'd probably be bitter too if you got thrown like 20 or 30 feet off of something.
I have mixed emotions about this spot, and here's why. In the wrestling business, I've always been told if your opponent and your person in the ring says they're not comfortable with taking a move, you don't make that man take the move. And New Jack wasn't the person that would have a plan B. New Jack said, we're doing a moonsault here. Fuck it. We're doing a moonsault here. Like, there was no other way around it. So a little bit of me is like, yeah, that sucks. Vic Grimes almost killed New Jack. But it's almost like, yeah, but New Jack almost killed New Jack. Like, let's be real here. If Vic said he wasn't comfortable taking the bump, New Jack shouldn't have made him take the bump anyways. And I know it was a different business, blah, blah, blah. Like, I get all of that. And I've got friends that were boys back in the 90s. So I get that the attitudes were different. But at the core of it, being a safe professional wrestler should be the utmost importance for everybody. If your opponent says, I'm not comfortable, don't make him take a bump he's not ready to, because you or him or both of you could get seriously injured.
Yeah. I think like if let me ask you what if, a hypothetical, if that spot did not happen, what do you think would have happened in this matchup? Because I feel like New Jack would have fucking took it out on him and just carved his ass up or done something New Jack and just make him pay in some way or another.
You know who Gypsy Joe is, right? If I said that
name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You think he was Gypsy Joe'd his ass?
For people that don't know, just go Google New Jack Gypsy Joe on the indies and you'll see Gypsy Joe had pain blockers in his nerves where he didn't physically feel pain like a normal person, and New Jack didn't realize that. So New Jack didn't realize him no-selling was part of his character. New Jack thought he was a dick, and then New Jack proceeded to literally attempt to unalive a man in the middle of a match. It is unreal to watch what he does.
It wasn't the first time.
It was almost like a game to him, though, when he realized what was happening, because he was like, no matter how hard I hit him, he doesn't stay down. You know what I mean? Like, it was like a game for New Jack.
I mean, yeah, between that, the mass transit situation, this situation at Living Dangerously, New Jack just,
I've been a New Jack fan for a long time, specifically going back to ECW, but even a little bit further back because I'm from Middle Tennessee.
I was gonna say you had to see the Smoky
Mountain. I was here. We were syndicated televisions for Smoky Mountain. I remember watching Smoky Mountain on my local TV stations. That's how close I am to Knoxville. It's less than 2 hours away from me, from where they shot Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Yeah.
So, like, I remember when New Jack hit the scene and then showed up in ECW, and then everything that happened after, and I'm like, this is that crazy dude. He was one of the first pro wrestlers where I was like, this motherfucker's crazy. Like, Nick Gage, like, you start thinking about people like that in deathmatch wrestling. New Jack was that first person for me in the 90s.
Yeah. Like, this guy is not like, this isn't a gimmick. This is like, this is the real personality that we're fucking seeing is New Jack. Ugh.
And I watched Funk and Cactus Jack, and I was like, I don't know if I want to finish this New Jack match. Like, am I watching a snuff film? Is that what this is?
Fucking for real, dude. It's just like, Jesus Christ. Another match that happens on this show, which is kind of, I thought was always kind of weird, is they pretty much like kind of mix up some different feuds. Like, you have a triangle match for the World Tag Team Championship, which at this point your tag champions are Mike Awesome and Raven. And kind of playing off of Tommy Dreamer and Masato Tanaka, feuding with those guys because they were a tag team. And of course the Impact players involved, which I think truthfully, like, Impact players should have just had like a straight run. They should have never like dropped the belts, especially that soon. Cause I mean, they only had like a couple months where they dropped them to Awesome. And or actually I think they may have dropped them to Dreamer and Tanaka first, but
yeah.
Anyways,
they dropped them to Dreamer and Awesome.
Yeah.
Dreamer and Tanaka.
And then Awesome was pulled a little bit of double duty on this show as he had a title match with Kid Cash as well. But moving on, speaking of awesome, we got to talk about it, gentlemen. So we fast forward here to April of 2000, and Mike Awesome shows some house shows. Not sure what the fuck is going on, but when in reality, Mike Awesome was signing a contract with World Championship Wrestling. Will, I know you're a big historian on this, on stuff like this. I got to ask and get your input on the whole Mike Awesome jumping ship to WCW.
This was, what was it when? Was it Rick Rude who was on WCW Live after being on tape WWE Monday Night Raw? He was on both Raw and Nitro at the same time.
He was on ECW a couple days before that, so he appeared on all 3 shows.
Exactly. Mike Awesome was dangerously close to that because there was one point where him and Taz were wrestling. It was a WCW wrestler versus the WWE wrestler for an ECW title at an ECW house show. And you're like, what
the fuck
what is happening here? Because it was like another good analogy for wrestling fans, learning the ropes. Brian Pillman. He would leave a company. People thought he signed with another company. Nobody was really sure what was happening. And it kind of gave that aura. Mike Awesome was that way without it being a fucking work, because Mike Awesome no-showed, signed a contract, worked for ECW under WCW contract, then told everybody he signed the contract. And it was like left hand not talking to the right hand, like telling one company one thing, but not telling the other. Like you already get the job with your new job, but you haven't put your 2 weeks notice in. You're just kind of waiting it out, like. There was some shystiness, and Mike Awesome definitely left some sour tastes in a lot of people's mouths because of what happened.
So many people, so much of a sour taste that freaking Joey Styles said that he would. Yeah, one night stand on
that Judas. Oh my god.
Well, this was
he should unalive himself, and then he literally died 3 weeks later. Is awkward.
We talked about it on
close to it.
It was like a month, like less than a month. Yeah,
literally right after he died.
Holy shit, that's crazy.
Drug overdose, suicide.
Yeah,
it is awkward.
It's a really deep. We talked about it again on the After Dark episode when we talked about the fall of ECW. Mike Awesome is one of those, like, another analogy in history for wrestling fans to kind of liken it to the finger poke of doom. You know what I mean? When he just started no-showing ECW and kind of shit on it, like, that was their guy. Without Rob Van Dam, Mike Awesome was supposed to be the dude. And he wasn't. And when he stopped doing it, that would have been like, Nash laying down for Hogan. That would have been like WWE getting notification that Macho Man signed with WCW because he didn't want to be a commentator. Like, that was a kick in the nuts for the company. Like, that was a loss for ECW, big time.
Oh yeah, and I mean, he was physically like one of the most imposing, I think, ECW champions of all time, man.
When
6'6" and lean and mean, living, rhythm, breathing war machine. Sorry, I had to get that in. Go ahead, Mike.
When he made that appearance for that match with Taz, it was told that he came in through a back door and was given his own room because motherfuckers in the ECW locker room wanted to kick his ass.
Yeah, because as the legend goes, Bischoff, supposedly in his contract, they were paying him X amount of dollars so he would bring the ECW title.
Yeah, he wanted to pull Medusa.
Yeah. And then, of course, Heyman and them come in and, like, literally threaten suit, and then thus we ended up getting this. And the irony, like you say, Will, is like, who do they bring in to take the title off of him? Fuck it, let's just bring in Taz, who is a contracted WWF wrestler. So you have this insane matchup of Taz challenging Mike Awesome on a house show in Indianapolis, and I've got a story behind this. I was actually going to go. I got invited to go to this show. I had a fucking.
Every time you tell me.
I remember it like yesterday, boys. Like, I had a test the next day I was concerned with in fucking math. Fuck math. I could have seen something historic if I didn't worry about my fucking Algebra 2 test the next day.
Nerd.
Every time you tell me that story, I get more pissed off.
I could have went to it, but no. But I think our good friend Husky, Husky was at that show, though. I believe he was at the Indianapolis. That's at the Egyptian Room. So, but anyways, yeah. But here you have this crazy fucking moment happening that like Taz wins the ECW title, and it's like, okay, like what the fuck are we doing now? You know, because it's like it's crazy, man. What's up, Dad? How you doing, brother? I'm assuming that, or whoever that is from Wreckage. I'm assuming it's Dad. But yeah. So now you have like it's crazy because then Taz appears on fucking SmackDown like a week later or whatever, and wrestles Triple H, who's the WWF champion. So in the span of a week, Taz has wrestled a WCW contracted wrestler and a WWF contracted wrestler, and he's the ECW champion. Talk about Forbidden Door, man. Shit.
That's what blows I hate, and I don't want to go on a tangent for too long, but that's what I hate about wrestling fans in 2024 when they're like, Tony Khan created the Forbidden Door, and I'm not taking away from what TK and AEW have done to open that and make the norm of wrestling companies working with each other, because it hasn't always been the norm, but it hasn't always also never happened though, because I did a video about it the other day. This and Smoky Mountain Wrestling and WWE were on TV together for the tag titles. You talk about WWE and Memphis had a working relationship. That's how Macho Man ended up there in the first place. Same thing with Lawler. Like working relationships in the Forbidden Door has been around the entire time. The entire WCW When Worlds Collide pay-per-view with AAA in 94. You know, like this kind of stuff has been happening forever.
Yeah, it's not new. It's not new at all. They put a nice little cute like name on it essentially. And yeah. Well, as we kind of move on here, so now you have Taz, who's a WWF wrestler, is the ECW champion. We go into CyberSlam 2000, ECW Arena, and then the moment I think a lot of us ECW fans wanted, but the guy himself and involved never wanted this to happen. Tommy Dreamer, the heart soul of ECW, defeats Taz to win the ECW title. But as he said many times, the only reason he took that title and that win was just because they had to have somebody they could trust to put the belt on.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Will. Like Dreamer winning the ECW title, do you feel like there was that, all things considered, was that the appropriate call to do, or you think they should have put it on somebody else?
Dreamer was the safe call, but I also feel like it was a kick in the nuts for Tommy, because if you go back to 96 and Heat Wave and everything that was happening with him and Raven around that time and Sandman and everything, like Tommy Dreamer was a star well before 2000. He deserved that title well before 2000. And it was just kind of almost like a consolation prize. They finally gave it to him because they didn't really know who else. And that was Paul Heyman's fault. That was TNN's fault. That's everybody's fault except for Tommy Dreamer, in my opinion. I love that he got the reign, but he says it himself. That wasn't winning the ECW title. You know, he won the title, but he didn't win the title. Like,
yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with that 100%. Ironically enough, though, pretty much immediately after, Dreamer does drop the belt to Justin Credible. And thus you kind of get the breakup of the Impact players here, essentially, because Justin Credible is now, okay, now he's going to be our top guy. And he had a hell of a 2002. I mean, outside of like the Impact player stuff, like he became pretty much the top dog for the most part, as he held the ECW title all throughout the rest of 2000 for the most part. And this, like I say, this kind of segues into the Impact players feuding. Of course, Lance Storm ends up joining WCW in the summer of 2000 and had a hell of a run there in WCW too, if I do say so. But that's a different show for a different time, right? And of course, at this time frame too, you got Rhino finally. Well, actually, interestingly enough, we can backtrack here a moment. So Tajiri is the guy who defeats Super Crazy to win the TV title, and then thus the network forces him to relinquish the title essentially to Rhino. And Rhino is now the TV champion and goes on his run. And of course, you also have the tag team titles become vacant at this point as well. But let's get into Hardcore Heaven 2000, the next pay-per-view for ECW. And here you have in the main event, it's the big blow-off match of one Just Incredible and Lance Storm. Let me ask you guys this. Do you think they pulled the trigger way too soon in splitting these guys up? I feel like they did, but I also feel like their hand was forced with ultimately Storm ending up leaving, because you talk about the backstage stuff that's going on. I think at this time frame too, Lance Storm is like one of, if I remember correctly, I think he's kind of one of the first guys who was like, no, I'm not going to put up with this bullshit and not get paid. I'm going to go elsewhere.
Yeah, he was not one of the first, because, you know, Raven and Sandman did the same thing in '99.
Well, I guess that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was fed up, though. He's got a record. He's like, yeah, my checks were bouncing. I had a family. This is not, like, I can't do this. And, you know, Bischoff had that fucking Ted Turner checkbook.
Oh, yeah. What about you, Will? What do you think the Impact players should have had a longer run in the ECW?
I was looking ahead at some of it just so I could refamiliarize myself with some of the storylines as we're going. And when you look at the final match and the main event for a lot of these shows, like you see either Just Incredible or Jerry Lynn, or like you see some of these guys all over, and I'm like, I don't know if it wasn't their run didn't get long enough, or there was meat left on the bones, and they both had successful runs after it. So it's one of those, like, if we didn't break them up then, would they still have been would it have been so successful afterwards? Had we waited, would they still had the same effect? Because, like, they both had great years in 2000s, even post breakup. Oh, yeah. So it's like, if we had waited to pull the trigger, would it have made a difference?
That's a good point. I mean, because at some point we knew they were going to be pushed. I do think definitely their hand was forced with Awesome leaving and whatnot. So I mean, it was like, okay, we got to do this. It's like now or never, essentially.
We also know, because of current TV deals, we wouldn't have known this in 2000 as young wrestling fans, but we know now, because this kind of information is secondhand, that by May of 2000. Paul had an idea as to what was going down by this point. We're almost at the halfway point of the last year. You know, they don't make TV deals happen in 30 days. You know, you're negotiating this stuff a long ways out. And we saw them start negotiating the deal that Netflix signed in 2023 when VKM came in and screwed a bunch of stuff back up. Like, it was a mess. Like, now you look at it and you're like, it's kind of like, again, I use this analogy a lot, but history repeats itself in the wrestling business. And we saw it here. Like, I think Paul had some writings on the wall. He was concerned because he didn't know what the TV deal was going to look like May of 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those of you folks who don't know what Will is talking about here, at this time frame, it becomes fully kind of aware that WWF, the hottest act in all of wrestling, is about to make a historic run and jump ship to TNN, essentially. It's some wild shit when you think about it, because essentially TNN kind of used ECW as like a test to see, like, okay, how does wrestling do on this network? And it's like, oh fuck, this okay, we're onto something here. But yeah, it's just crazy to think, and it's also crazy too as a longtime WWF fan to think, like, holy shit, WWF's not gonna be on USA anymore. Like, what? The TNN network? Like, outside, if you weren't like a diehard ECW fan, I think people were like, oh, that's the country music bullshit channel, which it was for years too. But
no, it was.
Yeah. But back kind of talking hardcore heaven here in 2000, there is a match on this card that I think is a hidden gem. This is another one of my favorites. It is a massacre of a matchup. And once again, it starts to kind of like this. To me, I think this was the first real matchup outside of the match he had with Dusty, where it really launches Steve Corino as like, holy shit, this guy can fucking go. Like, the matchup he has with Tajiri as like this long time, companions, and now they are rivals because the network and Tajiri's not going to put up with that shit. Like, Tajiri, like the Japanese buzzsaw, Tajiri is a bad man in this matchup. Like, the shit he does to Corino, my God, man. And the buckets that Corino bleeds in this matchup. Do you guys remember this matchup?
Yes.
Oh my god! Like the spot at the end where he does the double stomp through the fucking table and shit. Oh my god, so good.
I don't remember the specific match right offhand, but when I think of Tajiri specifically, he's a fast, angry, like buzzsaw. And
Yeah.
that's his nickname, but that's the best way
Yeah.
to describe it. He goes 1,000 miles an hour, and people say, slow down, let your stuff breathe. Somehow he does without slowing down.
Yeah.
Like
It's
he
very
was
impressive.
he was a lot like Ray, you know. He could go a million, especially young Ray. Let me specify. Young Ray. You know, he could go 1,000 miles an hour, get all this shit in and still make it make sense. And that was Tajiri. Tajiri, I think, had a little bit of a transitional issue with American fans outside onto the mainstream, because I think him and Ray could have been interchangeable in a lot of ways stylistically. Ray's a much better luchador, and I think Tajiri had that hard style that never translated into WWE the same way the luchador style did. So I think that was the biggest difference between Ray and Tajiri. Like, without knowing specifically about this Carino match, I'm sure it was a banger. I'm sure that Carino bled all over the place and a table broke.
Multiple tables. Yes. Yeah. It was, dude. It was. It's such a good fucking matchup. Also at this show too, we get the return of Rob Van Dam as he returns from the injury, which is crazy to me. Like how fast he returned, because I think he was only out for like 3 months or something like that.
It's that weed.
No. Yeah. Yeah. And of
Speedy
course,
recoveries.
you get a matchup against a longtime rival, Jerry Lynn, which is crazy too, because if you look back, like the year before, they had that incredible classic all-time matchup at Hardcore Heaven '99, and Van Dam has pretty much like owned the rivalry, but Jerry Lynn actually picks up the win in this matchup, and Jerry Lynn is another guy in 2000, had a very interesting 2000, and finally getting a push as one of the top guys as well. Which made perfect sense.
There's a rivalry that's happening around this time in 2000 that I do want to speak about, because it's one guy versus four, and it's New Jack versus the Baldies.
The Baldies. Yeah. It was funny because it was like with ECWs, you know, the shows were pretty much, you knew kind of what you're going to get. You're going to get like maybe 2 or 3 announced shows or matches on the pay-per-view. You're going to get a New Jack match where he just comes in and beats the fuck out of the Baldies in 2000.
But like they had a one-on-one match. It was him versus Angel, but they had their tag team of DeVito and Angel in his first match versus Nova and Chris Chetti.
Yeah.
They were all over this as like the mean thugs that were trying to prove that New Jack wasn't as gangster as he claimed. And they did those great videos on the New York train stations.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Just,
those vignettes were wonderful, man. Like ECW always had great vignettes, but
And
those are some guys. That's another one, I think. Another thing I think about 2000, there's so many guys that kind of get lost in the shuffle because it was the end, but the Baldies was a fun act to watch in ECW this time.
I loved it. And you get Tony DeVito, an independent wrestling legend.
Mm-hmm.
You get Angel, who, I mean, he didn't do much after ECW, but that third man in the Baldies became a WWE superstar. And Vito.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And Vito also worked there beforehand as Skullfong Crush, too.
Yeah, he was another one who had, a long run in and out of, ECW and then WCW and WWE, who doesn't get spoken about enough with, how long he's been in the business.
Yeah, 100%, bro. Well, as we fast forward a little bit here in the year 2000, let's go to the next big show for ECW, which would have been Heat Wave 2000. And this was an interesting show because ECW kind of gets a taste of its own medicine, so to speak, because we got to talk about it. The infamous XPW tries to invade ECW.
Rob Black.
Yeah, well, first and
on
foremost,
multiple levels for multiple reasons. Fuck Rob Black. And shout out to my boy Billy Welsh, aka the Messiah.
Yeah. Oh,
The ones
Messiah.
that don't know.
He just wanted to play GameCube, goddammit. But anyways, and then you took his thumb, you cocksuckers. But yeah, so like you get XPW showing up because this is considered XPW considers this territory because they're out
This
in LA.
is literally the building they ran.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is yeah.
Yep. So they tried to kind of cause a scene and did, but I mean they didn't nearly come off as successful. And
No,
I mean
not at
shit,
all.
we know the history with, if you're a hardcore wrestling fan, you know the history with XPW and what the hell happened there. But this show is highlighted by you have your main event, the continuation of another great rivalry in ECW, Tommy Dreamer and Just Incredible, as they're feuding for the ECW title at this time. And they have, I believe they have another, this one's a Stairway to Hell match.
Yeah.
Which, if you're not familiar with Stairway to Hell, it's essentially a ladder match, but at the top, it's not necessarily a championship or a briefcase. No, it's barbed wire because, I mean, fuck it, it's ECW.
Yeah,
why
why not?
wouldn't it be barbed wire at the top of to grab? So, awesome matchup. But one of the highlights, I think, the big moments on this show is the debut of Rob Van Dam's newest maneuver, the Fan Terminator, which is the first person to ever really do the coast to coast was Rob Van Dam, people. And I just remember like Joey Styles, the call on this. You may remember it, Will, too, as well, being a big Joey fan, but just like he just blatantly just like he pauses. He's like, holy shit. Like just like like what the fuck did I just like, just an honest to God reaction, like what the fuck was that?
That was the brilliance of Joey Styles, though.
Yeah.
And there was a lot
really
of times he did the Zabisco, Bobby the Brain Heenan approach, where he would want to know as little of the production notes as possible going into it, so you would get that real visceral reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes, like the holy shit moment, like he wouldn't control it. That was just Joey being Joey. Like, y'all see that? Like, y'all see that happen?
I watched the Rob Van Dam shoot interview, and he said that was genuine because he didn't tell anyone he was going to do that except for Justin.
Yeah.
He didn't tell anyone he was going to do that, and he was like, "Oh, okay, I could do it." He didn't even know if he could do it.
Yeah, I think it was
just
like, fuck it, let's see what happens. And man, it was a spectacular looking maneuver too. And interestingly enough, a lot of people forget about this too. He did that maneuver to one Scotty Anton.
Yeah.
Yes, because Scotty Anton was in ECW for a very brief time. And if you don't know who Scotty Anton, we're talking the Scotty Riggs. For you long time wrestling fan.
Who, by the way, nowadays looking good and wrestling.
Oh, great. DDP Yoga killing it. I need to get some fucking power cuffs too, man. I don't know if they'll do anything for my fat ass, but I'm willing to try it.
And is wrestling for Cody and his sister at TCW.
Really? Oh, is he? I didn't know that.
He is a mainstay at Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling.
I'll be damned.
Because he was a TCW original when Dusty first had it.
Really?
Huh.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's fucking cool as hell, man.
Like it's like the two mainstays from the original run are like him and Glacier, the guy that plays Glacier. Forgot his real name, but yeah,
he's still a coach at the Nightmare Factory, and they are he's working with someone on writing an autobiography about becoming through WCW during that comic book phase.
Yeah.
I would buy that.
Life. Yeah,
that's kind of cool.
His RF video shoot about the party scene in WCW is wild. It is.
I don't think I've ever seen that. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Oh, Scotty Riggs' shoot interview is amazing, and he throws a lot of people under the bus, and it's awesome.
God, good old RF video. So many good shoot interviews out there over the years, man. Such good shit, pal. One other match I want to highlight here on Heatwave is once again another one building up Steve Corino. He has this incredible matchup with Jerry Lynn. And once again, it's a bloodbath. But I think what a lot of people remember about this is Jerry Lynn taking his finger into Steve Corino's blood and writing on his chest, "Die." Just like, what the fuck, man? It was goddamn Corino. I loved Corino at this time frame. I can't say it enough.
Was this Jerry's heel turn around Joey?
This is when Jerry Jerry's starting to be like, okay, I'm fucking over this bullshit. I should
Yeah.
be the fucking top guy. I should be the main event guy.
Because it was
Like,
why
the network, because he's still like feuding with the network. He's one of the guys that was feuding with the network too, as well.
Yeah, because didn't he like join the network for a bit though? Because this is when he started.
Irony is at the very end he does. So
yeah,
like
because this is when he starts calling himself the real whole effing show.
Mm-hmm.
While Rob was gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and speaking of Jerry, he would have like a big moment at the next pay-per-view, but a couple things happen, of course, before then. One of them, if we finally do get new tag team champions, and it's interesting, this tandem is another tandem that I think people tend to forget about because it's the last year of ECW. But one of them, obviously, guy we've already talked about, but another one, an ECW original who kind of gets a resurgence in this new character. Let's talk about Tajiri and Mikey Whipwreck. Loved Tajiri and Mikey Whipwreck. And of course, we cannot talk about those two without talking about the Sinister Minister. I fucking loved the Sinister Minister at ECW. Just the shit he spewed out and just that cackle. Oh my God.
His openings for pay-per-views is
oh
so
yeah
good.
Oh yeah. What did you guys think of that tandem of Tajiri and Whipwreck, man? Because it was a pretty wild team.
I loved it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My dogs are losing their mind. They love Mikey Whipwreck.
Yeah,
I had, when I interviewed Mike Mondo from the Spirit Squad, if you guys remember him, he trained with Mikey Whipwreck. And when I asked him about that, he was one of those guys where he's like, Mikey has this kind of infamous, like notorious nature around the business where he's known for this hard hitting, go in, hit firm, shoot on him, make him look, make it real, brother kind of guy, but he's like, when you get to know Mikey Whipwreck as a person, he's one of the most like genuine, good-hearted, like people in the business. He would give you the shirt off his back, pay guys extra to make sure out of his PO to make sure guys got paid. You hear all these great stories. And then he's one of those like the opposite of the character, because you see him go out there and just beat the shit out of everybody. And then you figure out afterwards, you're like, you're just a good-hearted guy.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. But yeah, for me, I always was just fascinating to see like the Mikey Whipwreck. I remember that my first company was like that ultimate underdog, the I'm gonna die, Mikey, and to see him kind of transgress into this just crazy psycho guy, I fucking loved it, man. And there was some great tag teams here at the end of ECW too, as well, in this division. We mentioned them earlier, Nova and Chetty, an awesome fucking tag team. Love those guys working together. One of my personal favorite tag teams of all time in ECW, not just this era, but Danny Doran and Roadkill. I fucking love Danny Doran and Roadkill, man. Just Doran, just the ridiculous bullshit over the top, and like Roadkill's just got just comes in just the one chickens. Like what the fuck? Like every fucking time it was just like completely could be taken out of context, and I fucking love that.
I hear Danny and Roadkill, and I don't know if you guys have seen this shoot or hear Danny talking about this, but when Lita managed for that short time in ECW as Miss Congeniality.
Miss Congeniality, yeah.
I guess her and Roadkill hated each other.
I've heard that too, yeah.
It was like where they had to like ride together, but they couldn't stand each other because I guess Roadkill was hated by a lot of people in the wrestling business, because I guess he had the same issue at Ultimate Pro Wrestling when they got sent down there when ECW was bought out, and it was just like he wasn't well liked.
Oh, that's a shame, because I thought as far as like in ring, I enjoyed the character,
great.
and I love the tandem with him and Danny Doran, man.
I guess like Luther Reigns wanted to kick his ass at one point. John Cena wanted to kick his ass at one point.
I should have just went out back and ate some chickens, man. That would have been good. But anyways, some other teams of this era too, like another one we got to mention, the resurgence of the FBI. as we
Yes.
now have little Guido Maritano teaming up with Tony Mamaluke, off of his straight off of a WCW run now, and like now he's coming in like, and they were a pretty badass tag team, if I do say so myself, man. Had a great run in ECW, winning the tag team titles.
You get.
And oh, go ahead, buddy.
Oh no, sorry. I was gonna say you also get a tag team that would come from Carolina, who started with the Hardys and Christian York and
Joey Matthews.
Joey Matthews.
Yeah, and those guys kind of was being pushed as like the future of ECW too. Another one too, man, we got to talk about is what about Easy Money and Julio De
ECW
Niro.
and Julio De Niro.
Mm-hmm.
I posted a video yesterday, and it was a screenshot of a tweet I put out of wrestlers that I think that are forgotten about.
Yeah,
I think people should look up Julio Sanchez, which would become Julio De Niro, because his independent run before ECW was phenomenal. He he had great matches all over the independents. But yeah, Julio De Niro is one of a great wrestler that I think people need to actually watch his matches.
Oh, yeah. And another guy too with them, we can't forget about Chris Hamrick either. And Jesus Christ, the shit he would do. Like
his flop outside
that
to
fucking
the ring?
flop outside is like, fuck, dude.
I love the Chris Hamrick flop. When we were doing Queen's Court, and he would job in the early 90s on Raw in like 94, and he would do that. There's like, I remember the first time we didn't tell Brie, and she was like, "What the fuck was that?"
The X-Pac match where he's the 1, 2, 3 kid and he does it, and literally Sean Waltman's like,
where did he go?
Yeah, I think it was that, and she was like, why did he do that? Like, what was what Chris does every match?
Bumps that don't need to happen.
Facts.
Yeah. Makes no context, but just I'm going to try to do this to pop the boys, I guess. But yeah. Well, one last tag team I want to talk about this air is a team. Another one I don't think gets nearly enough credit. Guys, we have not talked about tonight yet. I guess because Simon hasn't said yet. Let's talk about Simon Diamond and Johnny Swinger. I fucking love those guys. And then with C.W. Anderson, too. That trio. Oh, I love Simon Diamond, man. God damn.
Another one. When the starts of the independents in the early 90s that just killed it on the East Coast.
Oh, yeah.
With like him, Reckless Use, the Billy Kidmans. Not a lot of people know that Billy Kidman had a great run before signing with WCW on the independents, working for ECWA and like Jersey All Pro.
Yeah, nope, you're absolutely right, man. He had an incredible career. Went on to also worked in the original TNA as well for a little while too. But I mean, these are just
he was a great manager.
Oh, Diamonds in the Rough, wasn't there? Something like
Diamonds
that?
in the Rough, the Elk Skipper and David Young.
David Young, yeah. It's a fun tag team too, man. But there was a lot of like young, like kind of rising stars here, and it would have been interesting to see if ECW had went on, years later, see where they would have been. And then one more guy I want to talk about, not necessarily tag team wrestling, but this is a guy I thought was getting a huge push and was going to be a top star too. Another guy we got to talk about is Kid Cash.
Yeah,
like because Kid Cash was another one, was just like the shit he was doing and stuff, and kind of like I always thought it was just weird, because you look at Kid Cash at the time, his look and the music. I mean, it's like okay, he looks like Kid Rock. I guess that's why we're calling him Kid Cash.
Yeah, that's why he had weird short resemblance to Kid Rock. And Kid Rock at that point, I mean, he's a piece of shit now, but at that point, he was one of the biggest artists in the world.
Hey, say what you will about Kid Rock, I still think Ball with the Devil Without a Cause is like one of the best albums, like from top to
great music. He's just not a good.
But just after that, went to shit, and he's a fucking terrible human being.
It's because the Twisted Brown Trucker band fired his ass. Yeah. He got rid of the musicians in his band, and that was the issue. That's why his music went to crap. Like, not to go on a tangent about Kid Rock, but I stand by that fact that when he was playing with the Twisted Brown Trucker band, they made him famous.
Yeah.
Like, 1,000%.
Yeah. dude, that could be another podcast. That may have to be an episode of Coldcast.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, as we're kind of talking about ECW here in the last year in 2000, so you have Anarchy Rules is the next big pay-per-view that takes place, and the big moment on this show is Jerry Lynn finally climbs to the top and wins the ECW championship, and in his hometown too, as he does it right in Minneapolis where this show took place. Well deserved. Jerry Lynn definitely should have been ECW champion probably sooner than this. Would you guys say?
Yes.
100% for sure. And
Yeah.
another one of those guys that's still out there today, another AEW coach.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
we were just talking about him. It was Lance
Twins.
Storm. Yeah. Lance Storm and Jerry Lynn are both still currently in the business, both coaching for AEW.
Yeah. But this is kind of the time frame too where it's really starting to become, okay, this is serious. Now we're going downhill, because on October the 6th of this year would be the last ECW on TNN. And at this point, there's no TV deal for them. And hell, if you look at it, Raw had debuted on September the 25th of that year already on TNN as well. So they were on their way out. So, hey, they're struggling just trying to get a TV deal. Although the product itself is, and the stuff they're putting out is amazing, but just back behind the scenes, it's a clusterfuck, man. But let me ask you guys something, like, because there's been so many rumors over the year of like this person was going to come in and buy ECW, and we were going to sign a deal with this company or this. Do you think like ECW, like there truly was like a deal on the table, or you think all this shit is just like Heyman spewing Heyman shit?
Oh, I think it's definitely Heyman spewing some Heyman Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Heyman loves his own Kool-Aid.
Because I think if there would have been something in works, it would have happened in some capacity.
Yeah.
You don't. What was the okay? Cat Williams has a great line in his one of his stand-up specials. He says, "Nobody accuses you of the same shit 20 times and it not be true."
Facts.
Paul Heyman doesn't get called a shiesty carny by every person he's ever worked with and it not be true. From one minch to another, I love Paul Lee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that does
all
not
do.
take away from the fact that he was known. He said himself he took the money from his bar mitzvah to buy his first camera, to swindle people out of selling reprints of 8x10s that he was buying and printing, like all kind to get in. He lied to Dusty about becoming his apprentice, like all of the things. He lied, cheated, and stole his way to the top, to the point that he says himself that WWE blocked his TV deal to shut him down. But when we get there, he started working for Raw the next month when they folded. He was in the office less than a month after ECW folded. Again, these kinds of decisions aren't made in 2 weeks. He didn't put his 2 weeks notice in at ECW and start at WWE a month later. Like, that's not how it works with executives of that level, especially multi-million-dollar companies. Like, Paul did something. He had at least something to do with it, at the very least.
Yeah. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it as far as I'm concerned.
And I'm a Heyman guy through and through.
100, right?
Zero questions asked.
We get once again kind of call a spade here, and you know, Paul, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, you just gotta call it.
You're our piece of shit. We fucking love you dearly.
But you're still a piece of shit.
And the thing is, we're not the only ones. Look at how long this roster is still staying intact, still working, and not getting fucking paid. I mean, that just goes to show you, like, the credit to Paul Heyman. Love him or hate him, man.
Was there.
Yeah.
You had Bully Ray. He was handling all the booking and all the storylines and all the writing. Then you had Devon. people don't realize that if you were ordering merch from the ECW store, Devon Dudley was the one that was packaging it and signing off on your shipping receipts because he handled all of that.
Hell, if you called in, you were talking to Stevie Richards too.
Exactly. You know, like, what was it? Tommy Dreamer was in charge of making sure the ring got put up correctly with the ring crew.
And he booked the venues.
Yeah, like he was in charge of making sure the spots were booked. You know, everybody had jobs other than being pro wrestlers. So it wasn't just like a hot dog and a handshake. Like, these dudes were getting hot dogs and handshakes, not getting paid their POs, and then they were showing up on Monday to do clerical work. Like, this was a cult. You know, like, I've said
best way to describe it.
I've said it 1,000 times. When on the episode we did about it, I said one of the 5 factors that I said brought down ECW: the 2 broken working relationships, WCW, WWE, the failed TV deal with TNN, the moles going to WCW, Mike Awesome and Bill Alfonso, and the moles. You know what I mean? And then Heyman, just Paul Heyman. That's what killed ECW, and I think this was the beginning of it with the Heyman deals.
Yeah, it really was, man. And then, so really the only thing that's keeping them alive at this point is their house shows. Their merch is doing great, and they're still running pay-per-view. And that kind of goes to the next pay-per-view that happens. We talk about November to Remember 2000. Which is the crowning moment for Steve Corino, as Steve Corino would win the ECW championship in an interesting matchup, a double Jeopardy matchup, which I think I would like to see that concept come back personally. I think it's literally, to explain how it wasn't really a fatal 4-way. You had 4 guys competing, but you had 2 separate matches going on at the same time. So you had Steve Corino going against the Sandman and Justin Credible going against Jerry Lynn. And then, like, once the one guy had pinned the other guy, they would wait for the other match to end, essentially, and then they would have a one-on-one matchup for the title.
It's one of the best, most convoluted matches in the world.
Yeah. But I don't know. It was a fun matchup, I thought. And me personally, being a Corino mark, I'm happy as shit that he was walking out the ECW champion. Although I think a lot of people were pissed, though, that Jerry Lynn already dropping the title like a month later. But, I mean, you know, it is what it is. So
the irony is, one of my biggest things when I watch a fatal 4-way matches, I said, can you have all 4 men in the ring at the same time and make it make sense the whole time? They did a good job in a crazy hat on a hat match, like a double Jeopardy match, of involving all 4 men the entire time, even though technically they were 2 separate matches.
Yeah. Like, Corino would go off and start beating on Justin Credible. But that means shit, because you got to pin Sandman to fucking win your matchup, bro.
Yeah. Beating the shit out of the other dude did nothing. Like, they, you know, the advantage of helping the person you wanted to fight win the other match, like,
it's genius.
Yeah. Like, I feel like I could beat, you know, Dad Hat, so I'm going to make sure that, you know, fucking Husky gets the shit kicked out of him. Like, like, the way it was presented was gold, and it surprises me. Tony, I know you're listening.
Papa Con.
It surprises me that AEW hasn't done something this crazy yet.
Oh,
you think about the old callbacks they do, barbed wire steel cage matches, and I'm an AEW guy. I love AEW TV. You know, I watch Dynamite every Wednesday. I think that AEW's, those diehard AEW shills would love a double Jeopardy match between, like, Pac and Orange Cassidy, and then, you know, 2 other dudes, and then you think about it, like, the finals where the 2 winners,
what they should have done with the pillars.
That would be perfect for the pillars.
The
the pillars in a double Jeopardy match would have been perfect.
Yeah,
I would have loved that. Yeah, that is a concept that definitely should be used. Looking back, but so yeah, like we say, at this point, we're just running off pay-per-views, and, you know, it used to be, it was like at this time or before this, like ECW run a pay-per-view like every 2 or 3 months or something. But then they start doing them monthly, because we do get another pay-per-view the next month, as we get the Massacre on 34th Street. And also at this point too, like, when they're doing these shows, they start really just, the Hammerstein Ballroom becomes like the last resting place for ECW, essentially. because at this point they're also starting to cancel house shows. So I mean, you have the rosters in limbo; they're not getting paid. You don't know what the fuck is going on. The last episode of Hardcore TV airs on December the 30th, which, if you don't know, Hardcore TV was their show they had in syndication.
And they pinned it on your boy Cyrus.
Yeah, they did.
They pinned it on him. It was him the whole time. He's the reason ECW got canceled.
He is a virus, though. So, I mean, that's what viruses do, right? I think this is an interesting number, too, and a sad number. So, December 23rd, 2000 would be historic, as it would officially be the last ECW show in the ECW arena.
All right. So, speaking of this last ECW show in the ECW arena, you know how at the end of the show, beginning of the show here, I told you that there are certain people backstage?
Yeah.
I watched an interview a few months ago of one of the Backseat Boys.
Okay.
Trent Acid and Johnny Cashmere. At this last ECW show, you had the Backseat Boys, you had Homicide, and you had Loki.
And Steve Mack was also back there.
Yeah, and the Hit Squad.
Mm-hmm.
All looking to make their ECW debuts, just looking from creative or waiting for creative to tell them what they were going to do.
And then what they did was, and this is a lot of people don't realize, a lot of these ECW young up-and-comers, because what ECW was known for was putting over these young talents, just like you've mentioned the whole time. These young guys that were supposed to be making it, especially the ones you just brought up, Homicide, Low Key, Steve Mack, and what's the other one? The fourth one that I'm forgetting. I always forget.
Loki and the Backseat Boys were there.
Yeah, but when you think about these guys, those were literally the foundation of who helped make Ring of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You know what I mean? These leftovers from ECW in that Philadelphia territory.
And a lot of them were guys who were not trained, but they were helped around on the independent scene by one Mikey Whipwreck.
Yeah, that's true too. That's an interesting point, man. So yeah, so like you say, it's interesting what it could have been and where, like, there was still potential here, but you talk about a scenario of wrong place at the wrong time, man.
In that interview, Trent Acid said their first feud was going to be the Bad Street Boys, which was Joey Matthews and Christian York. That's what they were told. That's what was going in to be their first feud.
Wow,
they had the similar
dude, that would have
look,
been sick.
Similar name.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah. So then we get to 2001, the start of 2001, and it is just, things are looking bleak at this point. You have your very last ECW pay-per-view, Guilty as Charged, 2001. Of course, coming once again from the Hammerstein Ballroom. And it's just like, at this point, ECW was notoriously known for like shit thrown together, but I mean, they don't have any TV to tell stories at this point, so it's just like, fuck it, we're gonna put on our best card we can do and go forward. And ironically enough, the last match on ECW, like on a pay-per-view, was Rob Van Dam and Jerry Lynn.
As it should have been.
Yeah, as it should have been. And then the final ECW show of all time, which to me I find it crazy because this was January 13th of 2001, happened in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Of all fucking places for ECW to have their last show in Arkansas. Go figure.
Again, the Backseat Boys were at this show, and they're sitting in the back, I guess. And when it's actually announced, oh, hey, this is the last show you see, they were like, they looked at, I think they said they looked at C.W. Anderson, like, oh, we don't have jobs now? Like, they were caught off guard sitting in the back. Like, what?
Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
We bamboozled. Hoodwinked.
That's gotta suck. Because the Backseat Boys at this time were in Japan. They were working for Big Japan. They literally had to drop their Big Japan belts. Because they were tag team belts, and Trent was the Big Japan junior heavyweight champion. And they were told, hey, we're gonna drop these belts because we're going to ECW.
Yeah. So I find the statistics. I'm a numbers guy myself, and I find the statistics here, like at the end of ECW, fascinating. So, check this out, gentlemen. So, essentially, by the end, the company was listed as having assets totaling $1,385,500, and included in that, you had $860,000 in accounts receivable owned to for pay-per-view. Acclaim, of course, the video game maker, and San Francisco Toy Makers, who made the action figures. Now, the balance of the assets for the videotape library was $500,000, and just I find this fucking funny. Is listed a 1998 Ford truck for $19,500. Like, who's fucking Ford truck? I guess that's
Tommy's.
Is it Tommy's? Okay,
Yeah.
I was okay.
It's the truck that hauled the ring around. To be
say,
completely
I feel
honest,
right. And the
it
merch,
was his personal truck that he allowed.
but it was Dreamer's truck
for
though.
the ring. Yeah.
Okay, that's fucking funny.
Hilarious.
Yeah, and the liabilities of the company totaled over $8 million. And this is fascinating to me too. The totals range from like $2 was owed to Sabu. Like, what the fuck? What? How is it they just owed Sabu $2 Like, I want to know. Like, that's not even gonna get fucking papers for Sabu and back.
What I hope that $2 charge is because he had to pay for a fucking like soda at the concession stand, and he sent fucking Paulie and IOU because the one time the concession worker made him buy a soda or a water, he's like, "Fuck you, Paul. You owe me $2." Like,
I would fucking love that.
$2 to Sabu is fucking wild.
We better get that $2 back.
Did he borrow some weed or like?
Bro, I don't think you. Yeah, like I don't think he's getting rolling papers for that.
I don't know what weed was like.
You can buy rolling papers for $2. You can't buy weed for $2. Definitely, not in 2000. Yeah. Right, I'm old enough to know how much weed cost in 2000. It wasn't $2.
No.
Was it a crack rock? Like, what is happening here?
Well,
I think you're going off the wrong end of the rails.
We're going to break that down on the next Learning the Ropes episode.
Well,
we're going to talk
Sabu, and I'm just saying.
With special guest Sabu and the Sandman. Anyways, some of the more bigger amounts owned was Rob Van Dam was due $150,000. Shane Douglas was $145,000. You had Tommy Dreamer.
It's $145. $5.35. That dude says it on every shoot interview he does. Shane Douglas is a pissed off man.
Well, you would be too if you had to work at Target, goddammit. But anyways, Tommy Dreamer at $100,000, Joey Styles at $50,000. You get the idea. They ECW owed a fuck ton of money.
TNA fired his ass.
I was gonna say, essentially, too, a lot of these sound like end of year contracts where they just weren't compensated the last year that the company existed. And I bet a lot of these are what was on paper for these guys to make, plus whatever POs they were going to get from the pay-per-views and stuff.
Yep.
If I were a guessing man, I bet that's what those were. These are salaried contracts.
Yeah.
I 100% think you're right. They hit the nail on the head, my friend.
Which is funny that you put Shane Douglas there since he didn't work for the company for the last,
You know why they owed him that money? It's like the dude who plays for the Padres, and they owe him like $100 bazillion. So every year on June 2nd, they pay him $500,000 or whatever it is. Yeah. Like there's a running joke in Major League Baseball about it. That's what happened with Shane Douglas. They signed him for so much money, and then when he shit the bed and left the company, they literally still owed him all that money forever.
Yeah.
Like forever and ever and ever.
And he will never let you forget that you owe him.
No.
He says it in every shoot interview he does. Troy Martin is a pissed off human being.
Well, like I say, if you worked at Target at some point, you would too, probably.
Hey, he worked at Target because he got fired from TNA, not ECW.
But still, though, Target nonetheless. Fuck Target. Fuck Target. I said what I said. Controversial, I know, but fuck Target. I hate Target. Anyways, once again, that's a topic for another show. Well, gentlemen, as we kind of close up shop here tonight on Learning the Ropes, I want to ask you, I want to close with this question. If ECW, it's always the big what if. if ECW got a TV deal, do you think ECW would have continued on?
Yes.
I think it would have for a little bit, but I think I'm with
not a
Will.
long run.
And Will, could you kind of explain why you don't think it would? Because I think you and I are kind of thinking the same thing.
This is exactly why it wouldn't. And because at this time, you look at where Vince was as a person and as a company, he knew by this point in 2000 he was buying WCW. You know, like he knew in 2000, late 2000, that there was a good chance he would be doing it. He knew by the first quarter that it was definitely happening. He knew by March on live TV that it was going down. So, like, you look at that, even if ECW left TNN in October, last show, cut it off, 3 months of pay-per-views, Paul secures that TV deal for January. We know for a fact there is no chance in hell, pun intended, that Vince McMahon would allow another company like that to come up after he spent 30 years beating the first one.
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're very right.
I just don't think he would have let him breathe. He would have snuffed him out quicker than shit, because we saw him try to do it with TNA. You immediately saw it in 2002, where they were blatantly making jokes on TV about they wouldn't be around in 2 years, let alone 20 or whatever. Like, you see people on TNA shows with that quote on their signs because Jerry Lawler famously said that, like, they won't be around in 20 years, let alone 2, you know, like, or won't be around. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Like, but that was famously quoted, and here they are, you know.
I think
20-year anniversary
was like yesterday, or it's coming
Was
up.
it really?
Yeah,
it's on. No, their first Impact is tonight. That 20-year Impact.
Oh
show
yeah,
is
it is.
Oh yeah, fuck it is. It's
Yeah,
about
it
to
is.
start, or
Yeah.
just started. One of the two.
It just started. It was on at 5 my time. It's 5:45.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think to kind of go piggyback off of you, Will, I agree. Like, Vince would have been ruthless. He already was shutting down WCW. He would have wanted to kill the ECW. But I ultimately think too with ECW, it's still like history. You mentioned this earlier. History repeats itself. What comes around goes around. And I think ultimately the hole was just too damn big. They were never going to get out of it, regardless of what type of TV deal they done. It would have caught up with them eventually, and unfortunately ECW would have been done. But you know what the thing is, man? Here we are 20 some years later talking about ECW, and we all hold it near and dear to our hearts. It's like one of the greatest eras in all of pro wrestling, one of the greatest companies that we all love and adore to this day. And I mean, that to me is going to be the legacy of ECW, is just they were renegades, they were rebels, they were outside the box. It was something so unique at a time frame when wrestling was red hot, man. So, and you'll never be able to take that away from ECW, no matter what, in my opinion. So. Well, gentlemen, as we always do here on Learning the Ropes, before we finish up, we got to get in one last plug-a-palooza. And Will, I want to start with you because you are one of the busiest men I know.
He really is.
Tell us what all you have going, sir.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you, XLJ, and Mr. B-Roll. I know he's not here, but he's here in spirit.
He is.
I want to say thank you guys for allowing me to come hang out on Cole TV for the first time. It was my first time, and I'm glad it was learning the ropes because I needed to learn the ropes. If you're interested in my shenanigans elsewhere, I am the Will Gray. I'm the host and lead writer of Botch Bots and Chair Shots. Me and the boss bitch Al are the brain trust that run Rivet City Radio. We stream 7 nights a week. We have recap shows for NXT, Dynamite, Friday Night SmackDown. Botch Bots and Chair Shots is on Sunday. Trivia is on Thursday. Nerdy News at 4:20 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We go all the time. If you check my link tree in my bio at The Will Gray, you'll find everything I do for all of that and my writing profile for the Sportster and Last Word on Sports.
Man, did you even mention too World Championship Wreckage
and World Championship Wreckage? Like, I have a full-time job, and then I podcast for fun with my friends. Like, my podcast became a full-time job, so I have side project podcasts, so I can still hang out with my buddies.
It's a good problem to have, my friend. Well, Michael, tell us where we can always find you, good sir.
MJ Duplessis 1992 on TikTok and on the Twitter, and then here on Cole TV all the time. and then World Championship Wreckage, where I'm appearing on multiple shows on that channel.
Miss Man's all over the place.
Yes,
we're all over the place, man.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing. We're all one big happy family.
Facts.
And of course, don't forget you can catch replays this week of Pro Wrestling 60 here on Cole TV, as well as the latest episode of I'm Your Huckleberry and our very special Impact Wrestling vlog. And don't forget to tune in next week here on Cole TV, as we will have, of course, another episode of Pro Wrestling 60, in addition with a new episode of The Hunt and our very special Myco Wrestling vlog coming to you all next week here on Cole TV. And don't forget, you can also catch me over on World Championship Wreckage's YouTube channel as well. I can tell you, we are going to have a future episode of Fantasy Warfare coming out really soon, which I'm excited about. And also, of course, you can catch me with my brother down here, the Will Gray, and Dad Hat Wrestling as part of the World Championship Wreckage. And I know we got a fun episode coming up too, talking about the NWO and the Bullet Club. Just so much great, amazing content. So little time, but you should seriously do yourself a favor. Go over to World Championship Wreckage's YouTube channel, like and subscribe. Go to Will Gray's channel, like and subscribe. And of course, like and subscribe here. Well, that is going to wrap it up for this episode of Learning the Ropes. Very special thank you to Will and Michael for joining us here tonight. And we'll see you next time on another episode of Learning the Ropes. Everybody have a great week. Bye.